This is What's Left America. I'm Chris Tritico.
I'm Andy Georgeson.
I'm Chris Bell.
I'm James Campbell.
What's Left America is coming to you live from our new home in Deans, downtown, in beautiful downtown Houston. What's Left America is proudly produced by Left Out Media and brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and friends, and hopefully someday friends just like you. Today on the show, we're going to cover shutdown games. Was it a tweet? Dial M for White House. And we're going to end the show, just like always, with Out of Left Field. Let's get right into the show. If I can find my notes. Oh, that's not it. Let me find my notes here. Everything's messed up. Andy screwed everything up today. All right, out. Shutdown games. As the White House and Congress jockey for position in the shutdown game, 800,000 federal workers are left in a lurch waiting to get paid while the president and Congress play chicken. President Trump threatened until Friday that he would declare a national emergency and fund the wall with other funds going around Congress and Republicans went ape over when President Obama did it on some other issues. What we're not looking to do right now is a national emergency, Trump said on Friday afternoon, surrounded by law enforcement officials at the White House roundtable. I'm not going to do it so fast. But on Friday, federal workers went without their first paycheck and got a paycheck with zeros on it. That was really not a very good image for people to see on the news.
No.
These are real people. These are real people living paycheck to paycheck. And that's what's going to start putting pressure on Congress to do something.
Well, when it first started out, we hoped it was, you talked about shutdown games. We hoped it was a game, and we hoped it was just political theater. But, yeah, these are real people, and it's playing out. And I think that Trump realizes that he's losing right now. Polling shows that most people place the blame on him. The only people that do not are his base that he's always had, and even some of them are slipping. And so I think he's going to come out a giant loser on this if he keeps it going.
Loser.
And on today's shows, even some Republicans are starting to say you need to open the government back
Oddly enough, while in an ABC poll that came out this morning, 42% of the public is now in favor of the wall. That's ticking up, while the majority of the public blame the shutdown on the president, and the Republicans is squarely on the president. It's ticking upward in favor of the wall, and I don't understand that.
Well, I think it's just because of the relentless campaign, and it's ticking up from next to nothing. So, if you've got somebody constantly fear-mongering, some people are going to believe the hype, but
42% is a lot.
But it's just
I didn't know it was that.
But
high.
isn't it still breaking right along partisan lines?
I think so. I mean, it's still pretty close to the president's base. It's a little higher than the president's base, but
Yeah. So one of the things that Trump has talked about is the government workers supporting this shutdown. And Chris, I doubt that any government worker. I don't know any that are breaking the bank working for the government. Either local government, state government, or federal government. Nobody's going to put their paycheck over politics. I doubt that that's happening. But the reality is you have so many people and so many things being impacted by this. The economy's been impacted, the GDP, because people aren't spending money. There are people who live in Section 8 housing who may be evicted because they aren't getting a government check. Airport security, airport lines are going to increase if this doesn't change. And the media scenario has been about it's a record-breaking shutdown. Who gives a shit about whether it's a record-breaking shutdown? People want to go back to work because these people, a lot of them, are living paycheck to paycheck, and Trump has no empathy for or sympathy for that. And here's the thing, Chris. Unfortunately, in this country, we're listening to two different conversations. I tuned into talk radio on the right-wing side to hear what they were talking about, and it is literally a joke. They are making jokes about, national parks being trashed and restaurants being, and people not having food stamps and these are people who don't empathize or sympathize with
So,
people who are
then tell me
poor.
why the House would adjourn for the weekend on
'Cause
Thursday evening.
They knew he wasn't going to talk.
That's not the point.
Everything had broken down. And James, you were wrong. Donald Trump cares. He likes to have the biggest and the best, and now he has the record
best shutdown.
for the longest shutdown.
Yeah.
And so he will always have that, and he can hold on to that
Well,
as part
Chris,
of
I'm
his
gonna get
legacy. But in all seriousness, the other thing, this is not the way government is supposed to work.
No.
And I think everyone in the United States recognizes that.
I agree,
This
but-
is playground politics.
Absolutely, but that's my point about why the House would adjourn on
I'll
Thursday
tell you
and
why,
not work
Chris.
all
I'll
weekend.
tell-
What were they gonna
I'll-
do?
I'll tell you why. Because Mitch McConnell, it goes to what you talk about all the time, is the leadership aspect of it. Mitch McConnell does not want to lead. He knows that if he keeps doing what he's doing, and I don't know, it may be Machiavellian as far as I, know. Mitch McConnell may be doing this to hurt Donald
Mitch-
Trump, but he isn't going to get the GOP Senate.
That's the Senate. I'm talking about the House of
It
Representatives
doesn't,
controlled. Hang
it
on a
doesn't
minute.
matter what they do.
The House of Representatives is controlled by Democrats.
Doesn't
And
matter.
Hang on a minute. When you just took the House back and you're trying to win the public support, you don't close for the weekend when there's 800,000 people not getting a paycheck. You stay there.
They voted on a bill, Chris, to open up the government.
And they gave the president the weekend to say, just come back to work. They gave the president all weekend to have a bully pulpit. It was
yes.
wrong.
Okay.
They
yeah,
should have stayed
okay,
in session.
Okay. I get that. But the reality is, no matter what they would have done, it wouldn't have opened up the government. So now Republicans like Lindsey Graham are calling for him to call for a national emergency to give him the ability to say, I open up the government, when he really didn't get anything for his wall. So my deal is, Chris, it doesn't matter if the Democrats would have stayed in or out of town. The Senate couldn't move on it at all. Mitch McConnell isn't leading on this.
Yeah, that's actually quite true. It's like if the House had stayed in session and just they would be hashing out legislation that wasn't going to be going anywhere, and that's a form of political theater also.
Well-
But they did have an opportunity to come home and pound it in their districts that this is the Republicans and the president's problem.
The ones who are really in trouble, though, are the ones who can't afford not to accept their paycheck. The members of Congress who can't afford not to accept their paycheck.
Right.
The ones who are, independently wealthy were independently wealthy before they ever got there.
Well, most of them get
that's
wealthy.
fine for them to
during
say.
The freshmen who just
Yeah,
won, who
the-
don't have any money yet, who haven't had a
haven't
chance to do any graft.
Do all the,
Well,
yeah.
some of them might be fine too, but a lot of people aren't. They
Right.
depend on that, just like anybody depends on their paycheck, and it looks terrible when other people are having to go without.
And they're taking their checks. Right.
You know, in
And-
the
but
pa- in the-
James's-
in- go ahead.
Well, James's wider point should not be lost, and that's that this goes beyond the several 100,000 government workers, federal government workers, and contractors who aren't being paid. There's no food safety inspection
Right.
happening now. So all we need now is one good, solid foodborne illness outbreak, and I think that the wider American audience is going to start to understand the seriousness of this government shutdown. When people aren't getting their SNAP benefits, and you mentioned poor people.
That the president laughed about.
But-
He
Yeah.
tweeted out a.
But that's interesting you bring it up, Andy.
But
because
everybody eats food. So.
Going back all the way to
Unless you-
my city council days, a guy pulled me over once and said, something you should remember in every speech, remind people why city government should matter to them, because they take most of these city services for granted. Well, now put that on the federal government. I think a lot of people are going to be waking up to things that they completely take for granted.
Yeah,
that
and-
now are suddenly going to start hitting folks in the face.
Thomas Friedman, a writer, said on CNN, "We have a core problem. We have a president without shame who is backed by a party without spine that is supported by a network called Fox News without integrity." I thought that was a pretty dang good
Well, that
statement.
pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, Chris, and it goes to the conversation that we're having in this country. We're hearing two different things. And so you have Trump merely talking to his base, trying to make sure that they understand that he's fighting for what he campaigned on, this wall, and that is what they are concerned about. They don't care about those. They may know family members who are impacted by this shutdown, but they don't care.
Now, I found
I don't know if that. I mean, I don't think that that's going to remain the case because there are a lot of farmers that are going to feeling the impact
Absolutely.
of this, and I think that we're going to learn a lot about what the federal government does when it's now that it's not doing it.
So-
but the other thing that I think you mentioned, Chris Tritico, is if that a national crisis is potentially in the works if
National
Donald
emergency,
Trump
yeah.
declares a national emergency to build this wall. And I think that's the conversation that we need to be having. I mean,
An
the stakes
emergency
go up
so dire, an
exponentially.
emergency so dire that he can wait and just kind of think about it.
Right. That's right. That's right. I'm gonna give the Democrats a little bit more time to coalesce on this emergency.
Well, but we should think about the week the Democrats had as well, because James Campbell was early in on this, how bad the optics were on the Democratic response to Tuesday night's speech, and that has been picked up far and wide.
Right.
How that was not the message that we
Yeah.
needed to be
no,
sent.
no, that was horrible. Now I found this.
And I didn't think their words were that bad, but the optics
No, they
were
looked
pathetic.
terrible. They looked terrible. They looked like they were. It was horrible. Now I found this. I can't put into words how bad it looked. But I found this the other day. Not every governmental employee went without a paycheck this week. Because after an intense lobbying campaign by the mortgage industry, the Treasury Department this week restarted a program that had been sidelined by the partial government shutdown, allowing hundreds of IRS clerks to collect paychecks as they process forms vital to the lending industry and put them back to work so that they could process lending forms and do a favor for the lending industry so that they could continue their work.
Huh, the banks.
Imagine that.
That is shocking.
Shocking.
That is, I'm just appalled.
A favor to the big banks. Who would have guessed that
Are they
Trump?
bringing any back to process the folks' returns?
No,
No?
Nope.
No refunds?
nope. Just the lending industry got
Man.
that big favor. Who would have guessed
Things are not fair.
that the Trump administration would do that? So before we run out of time on this topic, who's going to blink first? I still say it's going to be the Senate Republicans.
I do too. I agree.
This is gonna when the stories as they're starting to come out with people starting on the brink of losing their homes, when those things really start hitting hard, the Senate Republicans are gonna fold.
Absolutely.
So-
They're not gonna die
And-
for Trump
Yeah.
on this.
And here's the tragedy in all of this is that people are concerned about the political calculus rather than the lives of people. And we touched on the 2020 election. That is a long time away, and a lot of stuff could happen in between. And people in this country have real short-term memories about things that happened early on, unless we can somehow institutionalize the fact that Trump has impacted these people's lives right now in really profound ways. And that's the sad thing about this. I don't really care who blinks first.
Short memories, except on shutdowns.
I care who blinks
because
first.
every
That's right.
shutdown has been very costly for the party that has been blamed
for it.
the shutdown, and I think the same will be
But-
true here. I don't think people are going to
Shouldn't-
forget
By
about
the time 2020 comes around, the discussion is going to be about the recession that the shutdown is going to help trigger, and that was one of my
That's
predictions
the possibility.
for 2019.
So shouldn't the House of Representatives continue passing legislation to reopen the government and send that over to the Senate and have that optic of the Senate not even looking at it?
Just
That's a
like
good
the
point.
votes, the
Yeah.
repeated votes on
It just
Obamacare.
let the Senate every day let what's
the-
his name? What's his
McConnell.
McConnell? Let McConnell every day say we will not vote on this.
Yeah.
We will
Oh,
not
yeah.
vote on
Yeah,
this.
that's
We will
a-
not vote on this.
But I just want to say one thing. I just want to urge those Americans out there who really care about these people, go support their garage sales. Go
No,
support
seriously.
go support their GoFundMe pages. Let them babysit your kids. See how much that helps them. And that's what people are suggesting that they do.
the government is suggesting
That is the most ridiculous thing. How about give them a job? Let them come back to work so they can earn the living that they signed up for.
All right, that's good. All right, we're going to leave it right there. Let's go into Was It a Tweet? Let me find my My tweets. Now, this, of course, is our
Chris
game.
Bell's bringing up the
Chris
rear.
Bell in his favorite position, the
white,
end.
The white man
The
is at
end.
the bottom for a change.
So where are we in 2019, James Campbell? Where are we in 2019?
We know that Chris is at the bottom, and Andrea Joyson is leading
So
everybody.
I'm at top.
You're on top.
And he's the bottom.
Yes.
The optics on all of this are really, really bad. Almost as bad as Pelosi and Schumer.
But I'm also, Chris and I are also tied, so that wouldn't quite make an Oreo.
Two bottoms.
Two bottoms. All right, here we go. First tweet. The Republicans will get zero credit for passing immigration reform, and I said zero.
Not a tweet.
Tweet.
Not a tweet.
That was a tweet.
Yeah.
You're trying to go along with me because you know I'm a winner.
Thank you, Donald.
If you go with what I say, I'm going to change my vote.
That's right. All right, number two. President Obama's steady support for Israel throughout this crisis helps stop the war. He did a good job.
Not a tweet.
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 That was a tweet.
Uh-oh.
Tied up.
Tied up at
Tied up at one each. Number three. My actions in Iran are as strong as any of Lincoln's were.
Tweet.
Not a tweet.
Not a tweet.
Not a tweet.
It's looking hairy for me this week.
Andy's in the trailer there.
My Twitter has become so powerful that I can actually make my enemies tell the truth.
Not a tweet.
That's so egotistical that I have to call that a tweet. A tweet.
A tweet?
And I've just redefined Twitter.
Not a tweet.
That was a tweet.
Yo, James Campbell takes the lead.
You got more?
And yeah, that was only four, and I only did four, so I'm going to go to the tiebreaker, and hopefully we won't have a tiebreaker. Okay. Here's the truth. The government doesn't shut down. All essential services continue. Don't believe lies.
Tweet.
Tweet.
Not a tweet.
Tweet.
Uh-oh. So
Change the calculus.
I won with three answers. And
No, I had three.
I had three.
Okay.
Is it a
No,
tie?
You had two. You had two.
I'm pretty sure I had four.
Chris and I are tied.
Y'all are tied? All right, hang on. Let me go
Wait a
find
minute.
something.
See, there were
here.
5.
Yeah, that was 5. So I gotta pull out a tiebreaker here. Let me
So did I
find
have 2
something
or
here.
3?
You have two.
You're
You're out.
positive? I'm going to go back over the stats after the show.
She's asking for a recount.
Recount. All right.
Got a
we're gonna-
hanging Chad here.
I
That
gotta-
would mean I'd have to listen
I
to
got
the
to go
show,
into the
so-
archives here and figure something out here. We'll have a tiebreaker here in just a second. Okay, y'all ready here?
We're ready.
Yeah, all right.
Why didn't you just look on Twitter?
I am. I'm going to. I've got an archive here.
He didn't get that.
I got to go to my archives that I save all of my stuff in.
By the way,
You might want to
we,
put all
we
this
really,
stuff in one folder on your
we
desktop.
applaud you for doing this, Chris. I know looking through all those tweets can give
It's-
a brother
it gives me a-
PTSD.
Is
well,
this what you
it's-
call killing airtime?
Yeah.
The problem is not reading them. It's having to think like Donald Trump and write something. That gives me a
Yeah.
headache every week.
Yeah.
All right.
Sad.
Okay. Yeah, sad. Okay.
Losing subscribers by
That's
the
right.
second.
That's right. The whole Russia probe is rigged. Just an excuse as to why the Dems and crooked Hillary lost the election in the states haven't been lost in decades.
Tweet.
Tweet.
Tweet. All right.
Okay.
It's a tie.
All right.
Sure is like kissing your sister.
It seems that's
What is-
all.
what is
That's
that
all
like?
Chris Bell can do. Chris can't win outright. He just ties every week. Isn't that a
or
shame?
loses.
I don't have a sister.
He's like
that-
kissing your brother.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Dial
This is a
M for White
serious
House.
podcast.
The New York Times broke a story in the last few days, in the days after President Trump fired James Comey as the FBI director. Law enforcement officials became so concerned by the president's behavior that they began investigating whether he had been working on behalf of Russia against American interests, and opened a dual counterintelligence and criminal investigations of the president of the United States. I just don't know if it can be stated how huge that is, that the FBI was investigating the president of the United States in a counterintelligence investigation, and at the same time a criminal investigation for obstruction of justice. The inquiry carried explosive implications, as the counterintelligence investigators had to consider whether the president's own actions constituted a possible threat to national security. Agents also sought to determine whether Mr. Trump was knowingly working for Russia or had unwittingly fallen under Moscow's influence.
See, this is the kind of thing that I thought we'd start hearing about when we made our predictions, and I said that all of Trump's involvement in Russia would start coming out this year. And so I'm proving to be accurate very early in the year, despite what Andy Jortson thought would play out. Anywho, the amazing thing is how it's being received, because, as you said, it can't be overemphasized how big a deal this is. It's completely extraordinary that this type of investigation would be opened up, but yet it was. Now it's become public, and I'm sure folks are talking about it, but not the way they should be talking about it.
Well, and what's so amazing about it is the FBI started thinking about this as early as 2016 during the campaign. Now, they didn't start the investigation, but they were suspicious of Donald Trump during the campaign because of the way he was acting towards Putin in Moscow and the things he was saying.
But instead went ahead and announced sort of a non-investigation, or the non-opening of an investigation of Hillary Clinton instead of a spy investigation.
Yeah. So, but the thing, I think Chris makes a good point about, people are really tired of hearing about Russia. When I talk to people, they are tired of hearing about Russia. But the reality is, we have to keep covering this story because there's so much that's unknown about this. We don't even know what Mueller's going to do. I mean, it's Mueller time at some point, but we don't know what that investigation is going to reveal. And that's the thing that we have to be mindful of as people who care about journalism and stuff that affects this government. The Republicans want this to go away. The Democrats are coming into power in the House, and they are going to open up investigations, and that's one thing that young Evan talked about. Now's the time to try to walk and chew gum, because they have the power to subpoena. They have the power to put people in hearings where the American people can really hear stuff that they hadn't heard before. And so that's why it's important for us not to get Russia fatigue. And I know a lot of people have Russia fatigue. I get that. Sometimes I get sick of hearing stuff about Russia, but there's so much that's unknown.
But then if he doesn't come down very heavily on Trump, are you going to say that that's Mueller lie?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'll give James time to catch up.
The thing that's so the thing that's so
Mueller time already. Come on.
The thing that's so important about this is Mueller was appointed after the inquiry began, and this had to be approved by senior officials at DOJ.
Yeah,
and so this is not Bob Mueller saying this is what I want to do. This is DOJ doing this, and then Mueller coming in.
That's exactly right. And yesterday, Malcolm Nance on MSNBC went so far as to say that Donald Trump is a traitor. And this is not just collusion. This is about treason, and that's a really heavy charge to bring down on somebody. But here's another piece that I find very interesting: is the Trump talking points and what Sarah Huckabee is saying about this. They go to their reliable talking points about McCabe and Comey. And they even pull in Hillary Clinton again about why aren't they investigating Hillary Clinton? Well, they did, and so
9 times.
Yeah, and so this goes to the different conversations again that we hear in this country, and so I worry about that.
And for me, I don't understand why the voters didn't suspect that that Donald Trump was cozy with the Russians. The whole script is flipped for the Republicans. The Russians were the enemy forever.
Right.
Yeah.
If Barack Obama
get that.
or Clinton, husband or wife, if any Democrat had done even one of the things, calling on the Russians to investigate the email of the opposing candidate, if even one of these things that Donald Trump did before the election had been done by a Democrat, the
Yes.
Republicans would have lost their minds.
Absolutely.
Well, I think
And-
that's
you remember when
I,
we?
I think
so
that's
now that we're having
fascinating.
that Mueller, we know that Mueller is investigating these ties, all that says to me is, okay, we could have known just based on Donald Trump's actions, meeting privately with Putin, et cetera, that there's something going on. All the money that he receives from oligarchs,
but I don't think
all
we-
the business ties that he has with Russia. Of course, the FBI should be investigating.
But I don't
these.
think we wanted to think that, Andy. And if you go back,
why would we not be suspicious
Because-
of the man who is going
well,
to be?
I mean, I remember when he came out and said that he hoped that they would release her emails and all that, but we just thought that that was Trump being a dumbass once again and just saying
has
whatever
been
was on his
so
mind.
much reporting.
Now, when we look back, but
No.
I
Well,
don't
that
think
was-
we,
that
I don't
was
think
the-
we
Practically in
knew
real
then
time.
how
That
they
was the
had,
general-
were meddling with the election.
That was the general public looking at it the way you're talking about, Chris Bell.
Right.
But the FBI
Seemed to know.
look at it this way. He called on Russia to hack the Hillary Clinton email. This is in 2016. Called on Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails, refused to criticize Russia on the campaign trail, praised Vladimir Putin. Investigators were watching with alarm as the Republican Party softened the convention
The
platform
platform.
on Ukraine. And all of that, they're saying there's a problem. And then fast forward.
this was all known to the voters.
Right.
Every
and
bit
the
of this was known to the
FBI,
voters.
but the FBI is looking at that with skepticism. We're looking at it and saying he's just an idiot.
No, I'm not
And-
looking at it and saying he's an idiot. I said on this podcast that there is a serious reason for alarm that all of these things are happening. I may have not have said it well. I may not have said it memorably, but I definitely said it. This is not a surprise. If I can figure it out, I don't know why the FBI can't figure it out. They're just going to find the evidence that
Well,
proves.
but what turned it-
where there's smoke, there's fire,
What
and there's
turned
been an
it for-
awful lot of smoke.
What turned it for the FBI was when, right after he was inaugurated, he asked for the loyalty pledge from Comey and then fired him. When he fired him and then did the NBC interview and tied the firing to Russia, that's when the investigation began.
Well, and you brought up Ukraine, and you said a long time ago, Chris Tritico, that you thought that this inauguration investigation might be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right.
And then to read this week that that's what part of a very strong focus is these
Right.
Ukrainian businessmen who were over for the
Dumping money.
investigation and all having all these very interesting meetings. So it's going to be very,
This
very
is-
interesting to watch.
It's
going to
be big when this all comes out. This is big, and it's and you know they're sending out their people. Mike Pompeo, just yesterday, I think, when he was asked about it, said the notion that President Trump is a threat to American national security is absolutely ludicrous and not worthy of a response. Well, Mike, you're going to have to give a response pretty soon.
Yeah,
Because
agreed.
this ain't over, buddy.
I mean, we already know that there was election meddling. We know that. There's election meddling. There was a change in the platform. The one change that the Trump campaign was interested in, I thought it was the sanctions.
Yeah.
But you said it was Ukraine.
Well,
But-
they were changing.
The
I can't
sanctions
remember.
came
right.
in response to
Ukraine. Right.
So,
And
yeah.
so,
So-
as part of that, that last week a story that kind of went under the radar is how the House Democrats voted to strengthen the sanctions against Russia, and so that's a big deal right there.
And then
But-
they were going to undo it.
Yeah, well, but I want to go back to a point that Andrea made, and that is, you know, how did we flip the script like this? When we were on the Chronicles editorial board, there was an old guy named Bill Coulter, who's a hardcore conservative, Cold Warrior, who always called the Chinese the Chi-Coms and the Russians the Ruskies, and now Republicans are aiding and abetting everything Russia. How did that flip like that? I just don't get that.
because they wanted their man, and there were you know, he was defending Russia, he was supporting Russia, he would say, broach no criticism of Russia, and they wanted their man.
Yeah.
a path to power was more important.
Stand by
I mean, they
your
really
man.
let go all of their principles
Yeah.
about everything.
The-
Okay.
Now, you know,
So,
now
so let me ask this: Donald Trump has gone, and you were talking about this before we went on the air, Andy. Donald Trump has gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal the details of his conversations with Vladimir Putin, including on one occasion taking the possession of the notes of his own interpreter and instructing the linguist not to discuss what had transpired with other administration officials. How does the knowledge that we have today change our thinking on the president's meetings with Vladimir Putin and his efforts to conceal those meetings?
I say again, it does not change my thinking because I said, why would a president go in to a private meeting with a head of state that the American people had been schooled to believe was an enemy of the country, with no State Department official, no other American representative, no one to take notes. The only people who know what happened in that room are Putin and Putin's own translator.
And-
there is no reason that an American president should
Yeah,
go into
but-
a room
And we said-
with the Russian president and have a private conversation.
Yes.
And that, if nothing else, should have prompted an investigation.
Well, and we said on the air when it took place how reprehensible it was, and how we hoped that nobody would ever forget. But again, part of the Donald Trump strategy. Hey, look over there.
No,
And-
Well-
but I don't think
we don't even need to know about a private meeting
Right.
in a room.
We saw the public
We
meeting.
we saw Helsinki, where basically Trump came out
Genuflected.
and Putin bent over and he said, Donald, apologize for America. And he did. He was an apologist for Russia right in front of the world.
All right, Trump's response. He had 4 lovely tweets just this morning. I'm not going to read them all. I sent them to you this morning, but he was all over the New York Times piece attacking James Comey, Hillary Clinton. I don't know what she had to do with it. The FBI and every 13 angry Democrats, Bob Mueller, everybody.
What's interesting, what's becoming the trend, is that the truer it is, the louder, the tougher the tweet.
It really is. And for
really
some
is.
reason, Hillary Clinton is on every one of them.
Yeah.
The further she gets away, the more she gets attacked.
But I think, again, here he goes talking to his base, Chris, because he knows that the Democrats in the House now have the bully pulpit to call committee hearings on things that he should be concerned about. And if he is trying to turn the narrative around, he's doing it only with his base, because nobody else in America really believes that he didn't have some type of connection to the Russians and Vladimir Putin and the oligarchs.
So let me ask you that. I'm going to start with you on this, Chris Bell, because you were in Congress. With Mueller just getting an extension on his investigation, should the House open investigations into this issue right now with Mueller getting an extension?
Sure. And just like the Republicans did. And so it will make no difference. You can have both going on at the same time, and they should, actually, because one's going to be much more public, and I think the public really wants to know. And I think, and Cohen is now scheduled.
Right.
to-
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, it should be phenomenal.
But he's already pled. I'm talking about this Russia thing that Mueller obviously has kept a deep, deep, dark secret.
Which
and
he
I
should.
don't, and I don't know that it does his investigation any good for Congress to be trotting this stuff out publicly before he has a chance to finish.
Well, I don't know if it'll do him any good, but it also probably won't hurt it, because those who aren't going to cooperate aren't going to cooperate.
Anyway, yeah.
I think Congress absolutely should open up these investigations. I want Trump to come back, Donald Trump Jr. to come back and be interviewed about what happened in that Trump Tower meeting again in public. I want the public to see him plead the fifth and basically look like he's dishonest. Trump always changes the narrative. Remember, the Trump Tower meeting was about adoptions, right?
Yeah.
And then that narrative shifted and morphed, and now we have this investigation coming out in New York Times, and it's just so much going on that's why we must continue to stay vigilant in investigating this and covering this story, because there's so much more to know about it, even though we have fatigue about it.
Well, I think that the country has big problems, and I would like to see Mueller is wrapping up his investigations. All the reporting says that in the next weeks or months, we're going to get a report from Mueller. There's going to be ample time for the Democrats to do all of these interviews. We can see these people at trial after Mueller's,
Right.
we could read the report. I don't want to waste a lot of time having show trials.
Especially given the wish list
In the Congress.
Especially given the wish list that we heard about
Right.
that they have in the House right now. That's a lot of heavy lifts.
lot of
there.
work.
And so you better get started now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's go into out of left field. We're done early. 35 minutes. Andy,
Well,
how's that
that's
make
a
you?
nice tight show.
Yeah, all right.
So I'll go first. My out of left field is in a time when there's so much struggle and stress and strife and problems and worry, anxiety because of ridiculousness in the government, you need something to take your mind off it. And so I've started taking guitar lessons.
Oh, I thought you were going to say medicine.
I'm getting a divorce. No, so I've been taking guitar lessons once a week, an hour a week, learning some chords, learning how to play free falling. And, if you're learning a new skill, you are completely immersed in that activity, and you don't have to think about Donald Trump for an hour that you take the lesson or you practice every day. And so I highly recommend learn a new skill. Don't think about the problems in the country for an hour a day every week.
That's why
my new skill is making my backhand better.
Well, that is a skill that you need based on the time that I played tennis with you.
You mean you could exploit that? Please.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say that's why I took up the tuba last year. It has really been fantastic. So we'll have to do a duet at some point.
Trinity was on accordion.
No, I, as you all know,
Campbell on triangle.
cowbell. So I make my living as a civil trial lawyer, and I was thinking this week, I always advise people that if there's a chance that a case will settle, please don't draw lines in the sand as to how much money you will take. Keep an open mind, be willing to talk about it, look at the strengths of your case, look at the weaknesses of your case, and it's the same thing that goes on in any mediation. And the clients who have fared the worst are those that have dug in and said that they know what their case is worth and that they're not going to negotiate. And usually it ends very poorly for them because a jury or a judge might not end up seeing things their way. Often they won't end up seeing things their way. And Donald Trump could learn a lot from them because that's exactly what he's done. And instead of leaving himself an opening on the negotiations regarding the wall, he's dug in, drawn a line in the sand. But the difference is my clients who've done that end up really just hurting themselves and their families. In this particular case, because of his stubbornness and because of his complete lack of understanding how the negotiation process works, he's impacting hundreds of thousands of families. And that's really, really, as he would say, sad.
Very well. So, one of the things that, we have fatigue about in this country is talking about race. And, last week that came to the forefront when Representative Steve King, who represents Iowa's 4th Congressional District, in an interview with the New York Times, questioned why the terms white nationalists and white supremacists are offensive. And so, that we heard about that because we pay attention to the news. But, I looked at a poll that Media Matters did. And when that story aired, I wanted to know whether or not it got as much attention as the Rashida Tlaib comment calling President Trump MFer, right? And so they did a poll, and they found that that they looked at the networks, in CNN, Fox News, NBC, and they devoted more time, 2.5 hours of coverage to Tlaib, referring to Trump as an MFer, and in contrast, 30 minutes covering Steve King. Even more, Fox News devoted 52 minutes to covering Tlaib, while 42 seconds to covering Steve King's 42 seconds. Wrap your mind around that. They had full discussions about this. So I make this point to say, we have a really difficult problem in this country when it comes to discussing race. And the media is a large part of that. We'll see a lot of it in February because Black History Month is coming up, and they really get on it then. But
Fox News will be all over that.
but my deal is, the reality is when something like this happens, we need to discuss it, because until we are really honest about these discussions and really understanding why people of color feel the way they do, we aren't going to advance. And when the media plays into this, unwittingly or wittingly, they become part of the problem, and that's my out of left field.
And while Andy has a problem with it, that's why we need to maintain this seating arrangement, because I think we can really help bring America together.
So my out of left field, I decided on my out of left field before I put the show together, which shows why I should always put the show together before I wrote my out of left field, because we talked about this. Anyway, shutdown politics has real life effects on people. And as the ABC News has a poll out that Republicans on Republican support for the wall is up to 42%. American support for the wall is up 42%. Here's how I propose we end this shutdown. The House of Representatives, the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives, needs to pass Monday what I'm calling the Wall Act. That'll give Donald Trump the ability to say he got his wall. The Wall Act. We're going to pass that. And in the Wall Act, we need to immediately pass 50 miles of fencing, just regular fencing like we already have. Give him 50 new miles. Give him money to fix the fencing that's already there. Pass DACA, fix DACA for good. Give money for new drones, 1,000 new border agents, new technology to shore up border immigration. Give him things to shore up the immigration control that we need, but no money for a wall. But call it the Wall Act. And that gives Donald Trump all that he really cares about, so he can say he got his damn wall. And that's how we end the shutdown, and we can end what's going on in the country right now, because it has real effects on real people, and it's hurting the country. That's my out of left field.
So you say swing a shiny new bell in front of him.
That's all he gives a damn about.
Okay.
All he wants is to be able to say he won.
And do you want to use drones or gnomes? Have you decided?
Either one, I don't care. All right, that's all the time we have this week. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please rate us on iTunes. More important than that, what do we need to do, Andy?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Subscribe is what she's trying to say. It's all about subscriptions.
Was that in Pig Latin?
It was some kind of Latin.
I've been learning guitar. That pushed out my Pig Latin.
Like us, go to Libsyn or your favorite podcasting site and subscribe to What's Left America. Much thanks to Dean's Downtown, our new home. We'll be here every Sunday. Be sure and come down here, because we have a huge studio audience today. Be sure and come down here and join us every Sunday. Much thanks to Vertical Ascension Entertainment for getting us on YouTube every week, and King and DeLeo, our in-studio producer. We'll see you next week.